It hasn't even been a full week since the original Donkey Kong Land hit the Nintendo Switch Online, and Nintendo is back for more jungle fun! That's right, Diddy and Dixie are back in Donkey Kong Land 2, the newest game to hit Nintendo's subscription service. Yeah, that's pretty cool news. But is this game actually worth playing? To answer that question, I decided to flip through the pages of Nintendo Power, Computer and Video Games, and more classic magazines to see what the critics said about this game when it first came out. Boy, I sure hope you're okay with being drip-fed Donkey Kong games, because that's precisely what's happening in this episode of Nintendo Switch Online Review Crew.
Whoa, new Game Boy.
Yep, limited edition Game Boy Pocket Gold.
Can I have a go?
Yeah, later.
Hey, aren't you in the 100-meter butterfly?
Yeah.
Your race is on.
What? Nice try, kid.
Limited edition Game Boy Pocket Gold with Donkey Kong Land. $99.95, but only while stocks last.
With both Donkey Kong Land and the Super Game Boy giving Nintendo's 7-year-old handheld some new life, Nintendo actually had some momentum going into 1996. This was the year when they finally decided to refresh the design of the Game Boy, putting the old, fat handheld on a diet in order to slim it down enough to fit it comfortably into your pocket. Now, with the Game Boy Pocket flying off of stores' shelves, Nintendo needed some games to keep players coming back for more. In Japan, they launched the system just a few months before the first set of Pokemon games. But with those still a couple of years away from coming out in the States, Nintendo needed something for Western gamers. And just like that, they once again turned to Donkey Kong's extended family for help, releasing Donkey Kong Land 2 just 15 months after the first game. Once again, it was enhanced by the Super Game Boy and at least attempted to pull off some tricks that were previously unheard of on the aging handheld. But did it work? No. Or maybe yes. I guess it kinda all depends on which magazine you were reading at the time. Much like the first Donkey Kong Land in 1995, the critics were a little mixed, with the scores diving a bit lower this time around. A good example of that is Computer and Video Games, who went as low as a 3 out of 5. Essentially the same game as Donkey Kong Country 2 on the Super NES, except the cool interaction between the two characters is gone. As a consequence, some of the puzzles have been adjusted and others have been removed altogether. Regardless, Donkey Kong Land 2 is a very clever platform game and a worthwhile progression over the original. All the animal helpers have made it over, too. There's even a mouse cart section, which is completely new. Donkey Kong Land 2 is arguably the best platform game on Nintendo's handheld. The only problem is that you're being shortchanged if you already own Donkey Kong Country 2 on the Super Nintendo. Now, believe it or not, Nintendo Power actually agreed with CVG. Despite it being a flagship title for the Game Boy Pocket going into the holiday season, Nintendo Power gave it a somewhat low 3.3 out of 5, noting that although the levels may look familiar, the animation for the Game Boy has been greatly improved by the developers at Rare over the first Donkey Kong Land game. Donkey Kong Land 2 also makes great use of the Super Game Boy enhancements. They ended up liking the excellent action, play control, and graphics, but disliked that the stages are basically the same as Donkey Kong Country 2 for the Super Nintendo. Look, while these may not be great scores, don't worry Donkey Kong fans, GamePro is here to the rescue. Tucked away in their handhelds for the holiday section in issue 100, they ended up giving this sequel a perfect 5 out of 5. One of the best handheld games of 1995 gets a great sequel in 1996. As in the 16-bit version, Donkey Kong Land 2 introduces Diddy's gal pal Dixie, who uses her helicopter whirl to bash familiar Donkey Kong enemies. The 42 stages of side-scrolling action, hidden areas, bouncy music, and exceptional Game Boy graphics make this the best handheld game of the year. Well, as it turns out, the readers at Electronic Gaming Monthly agreed, naming Donkey Kong Land 2 the handheld game of the year. For what it's worth, the EGM editors went a completely different direction, giving that distinction to Tetris Attack. But hey, the readers preferred Diddy. And you know, the fact that we're talking about the Reader's Choice Awards in a magazine that didn't even bother to review the game should tell you pretty much everything you need to know about how few magazines actually covered Donkey Kong Land 2. With an average score of just 75%, this sequel is down dramatically from the 86% that we saw from the first game. You know, I suppose it's really only a matter of days before we find out if Donkey Kong Land 3 is able to rally and actually beat either of these two scores. I guess I'll see you then, probably next week.
So I says to her, I says, "Hey, is that Bob?"
Wow, he looks great.
Yeah.
Hey, Bob, did you cut your hair?
I don't have any hair, Jim.
He doesn't have any hair, stupid.
You dork.
You're sure looking thinner there, Bobby baby.
Yeah, I dropped a few sizes.
Your screen looks bigger, too.
Not bigger, just a lot sharper.
Take that new casing, Bob. Silver.
So, Bob, do you still play all the games?
All the Game Boy games, babe.
New Game Boy Pocket. Stick in your pocket today.
Hey, thanks for watching me break down these classic reviews. If you liked what you saw here, then you should know that we post new episodes every time classic games get added to modern consoles. We have a whole playlist with hundreds of these episodes. We've covered literally every Nintendo Switch Online game they've released so far, so, you know, give that a binge when you have a few minutes to spare. Now, here's the question I have for you. Who is the best Kong? Do you like Donkey, Diddy, Dixie, Junior, maybe King? Let me see your picks in the comments below. In other news, we'll be back later this week with a Thanksgiving Day special, along with a Black Friday inspired review crew episode. There's just so much to get through this week. While you wait for that, I strongly recommend you click that subscribe button and support what we're doing here. Till then.